Before the MCU was the biggest franchise of all time, before Thanos snapped half of all life away, before every company was scrambling to make their own superhero film, before the DCU was born, before the Avengers assembled, before Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, before Toby took his first swing, before people took comics and superhero films seriously, and just 3 months after X-Men, a film called Unbreakable was released. 22 years ago, M. Night Shyamalan created the East Rail 177 universe with his passion project, Unbreakable. Probably one of the first superhero films to be made with such a serious and realistic tone. I would even argue the fact that this is one of the most realistic superhero films of all time. I would even go further and say that it is one of the best superhero films ever made. And what makes it better is it all came from the mind of M. Night Shyamalan, a completely original idea that even right now, and especially right now, is a breath of fresh air in its medium. This film is a breathtaking achievement for what it did for the genre, and I am glad it is being spoken about more thanks to the continuation of the series in Split and Glass alike. A year after his major success with his big major studio debut, The Sixth Sense, which was one of the few horror films ever made to get a Best Picture nomination at the Oscars, Shyamalan pitched a film that for its time and even today probably would not have been made if it was not for his previous endeavor. This was definitely a thank you film. After Sixth Sense had brought in $630 million at the box office and getting nominated for major Oscars left and right, Disney was eager to work with the now up-and-coming director and allow him to make whatever his heart contended. In this case, it was Unbreakable, Shyamalan's biggest passion project and the one movie of his he has the strongest emotional attachment to. So much so that his heart was so broken by the critical reception when it came out that he didn't make his originally planned sequel till 15 years later. He poured his heart and soul into every second of this film, the way he uses the camera, lingering on the shots for a long time, allowing the audience to feel like they're taking a peek into these people's lives. It's like we're not supposed to be seeing what we're seeing. It seems too personal, like we're invading their privacy, using POVs to enhance a character's emotions or understanding of the world. His dialogue, solemn, heartbreaking, poetic, funny, and hair-raisingly emotional. This film works the most because of him. This is my personal favorite performance from Bruce Willis. He truly lives in this character and gives an A-class performance. A performance so good and so real that it would go over people's heads. It is so subtle and quiet. It's acting that brings me to tears with how he delivers M. Night's perfectly written dialogue. The sadness you feel in this character is genuinely haunting and thought-provoking. Fun side note, this is Willis's first acting role he's done with his fully shaven head. Now, Samuel L. Jackson also gives a brilliant and wild performance as Elijah Price. It is so wacky but has such an earnestness to it, an enthralling factor mostly coming from Sam's facial expressions and of course the wild hairdo and eccentric nature of how the character was written. And I think that when you get these last few moments in the film, Jackson becomes unsettling, and yet we're also completely and emotionally connected with him all the same. I think his performance in Glass is even more exceptional and makes Elijah a true, threatening presence. He is a complete horror show in that film. Both of the actors' chemistry together on screen works so well because the performances are so balanced. You have the subtlety of David and then the over-the-top eccentric behavior of Elijah that makes their scenes so intriguing. These are two people that will never be in the same room together having a conversation. And now we as an audience have to watch it unfold in front of our eyes, and it can lead to uncomfortable, awkward, and hilarious moments. Also to be noted, Spencer Tree Clark has an extremely touching and real performance as well that moves me multiple times, and one of my favorite scenes that always, and I mean always, brings me to tears is at the end of the film when David passes Joseph the newspaper and tells him he was right. That scene completely pulls on my heartstrings. This is the main reason I wanted to speak about this film and why it's one of my favorite films of all time. The main theme about finding your true purpose in this world and how not knowing what the meaning of your life is can destroy everything good surrounding it, putting you in a fog of your own emotions and causing major depression. This film makes a bitch out of me, I swear. No matter how much I rewatch it, I always cry and find more things to get emotional about. Every time I go to watch it, I feel like I cry more and more than I did the last time. I always find something new to appreciate after every watch in general. The fundamental idea about this man who has lived his entire adult life in emotional turmoil and has forced himself to keep it in, causing him to be numb and disheartening. This man is numb. He wakes up every morning feeling sad, feeling worthless, and not wanting to continue on. You see, his relationship with his wife and child are non-existent. His son and him are strangers. His wife and him are practically on the verge of divorce. He is stuck in the highest point of his life and can't find a way to move forward. So when something insane happens to him, a train full of people die and he is the sole survivor, he has to ask himself, why me? Why do all these people that have dreams, are actively achieving their dreams, having careers, having a wife and kids they are excited to see when they get home, die? And yet I am the one to live. The thing is, David hasn't lived. The incident and the things that happen afterwards force him to live for the first time in his life. He has to come to the realization that he isn't worthless, and he has the things he needs all around him. What he is missing is a true purpose, a true destiny. So when Elijah proposes some crazy theories, after going through such an already berserk experience, he wants answers. He wants to finally believe in something greater. He wants to believe that there is truly something special about him, and that all the pain he is facing day after day is something that can finally be rid of. He wants to find a reason to get up in the mornings. David's journey is so heartfelt, finding this man who is so beat down by his depression come to the realization that he has something great within him, and to slowly come to terms with the issues he has and get over it is so fucking emotional and brings me to full-blown tears, because that's something we can all relate to. We all want to believe we have talents or things to live for. We all want to believe we have a purpose, that we're not some worthless loser. The ideas and concepts dealt with in this film on a thematic and emotional level were things that weren't done in the genre. The closest next thing would have been Spider-Man 2 4 years later. And then the closest in tone would be Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, starting with Batman Begins 5 years after this release. This tone, writing, character development, and pure passion and care for this genre was not only a true first, but far ahead of its time. It was something I still think is ahead of its time right now with how it goes about telling its story. It's not action-centric, it's not CGI heavy, and it does not have the common structure to this genre. In fact, it's making fun of it way before it's even truly popular in the public eye. It is a $75 million film that doesn't even look like it because it's shot and written like a drama, which it is. Because it puts drama, story, themes, and characters in the forefront. I wish more comic book based properties would be doing the same right now. It kind of just feels like we're going backwards into that goofy time where they weren't taken seriously. So it's nice to have something as compelling as Unbreakable to look back at and appreciate. James Newton Howard's theme for this film is breathtaking and builds so much hype and emotion. I love the haunting piano and deep strings having a slow build up to something epic and emotional in scale. The whole score is like this and adds so much emotion to the final product. It is really important to adding atmosphere, depth, and tone to this movie. It is truly one of the most important aspects of why this film works so well. Shyamalan gives true homage to comics, and you can clearly see this as someone who grew up reading them and loving them. You can tell this is something special and straight from the heart of a person who loves something from his childhood so much it followed him into adulthood and it became his biggest passion project. If you notice, David Dunn is a reference to the hero's alter ego always having the same first letter in their first and last name, or at least the same sound. You know, Peter Parker, Clark Kent, Bruce Banner, etc. Elijah and David have their own colors throughout the film, David's being a green of bright color reflecting good, and Elijah's being a royal and pompous purple. Even at the end, Elijah explains how the hero and arch nemesis always start off as friends. It's a film that's so serious, but it's also not ashamed of the material it's inspired by. All throughout the movie, you can look back and see all the foreshadowing that was being planned, because early on in the script writing process, Shyamalan realized that this had to be a trilogy with essentially 3 acts. Split was actually a part of the movie originally, and the movie was going to keep cutting back between Kevin and the girls and David's journey, and then by the end, Kevin was going to turn into the Beast and he was going to fight David. But M. Night knew that Split should be its own story, essentially having their own origins and then setting up a third finale where they face off with each other. You see with the cover of the limited edition comic that Elijah first receives from his mother being a reference to the Beast. David actually spoils how he dies when he tells Elijah that only ordinary people die by drowning. There's a little kid that is being abused by his mother that is most likely a younger Kevin, and Shyamalan plays himself in all 3 movies and even has a little baby character arc. As stated earlier, Unbreakable had a $75 million budget, which would be $129 million today. It had a massive budget. There weren't $100 million movies being made, so something like this was insane. And yeah, like I said earlier, it doesn't look like a big budget movie, and honestly, I don't know where the budget went. But with this budget, it brought in $248 million at the box office, which for the time was great. It was a time when studios wanted 2 times, 3 times their investment return instead of 10 times. The critical reviews were lukewarm, and a lot of people did not understand the film and were just plain out confused. It was considered a box office disappointment and a critical disaster. This caused Shyamalan emotional turmoil and was so hurt by the reception that he decided to not make his second or third movie as originally planned. He even expressed that when people would bring up Unbreakable at fan greets or interviews, he would try to deflect because it hurt him too much to talk about it. Here's the thing though. As mentioned earlier, X-Men came out just a mere 3 months before Unbreakable, and it had the exact same budget and was riding off the coattails of an already popular franchise at the time, making $296 million, which was a very similar amount to Unbreakable, and it's something nobody talks about. For something that is completely original and does not have an established fan base, that 50-ish million that it didn't make compared to X-Men makes sense. It is very impressive that it came anywhere close to it. It should be considered a financial success. And for the critical reception, it is reasonable and understandable that it wasn't received so highly because the marketing was a very similar issue that happened to another M. Night movie called The Village. They only had one trailer for Unbreakable, and it was made out to look like it's some horror mystery. So when the first thing that pops up on the screen is a bunch of text explaining facts about comic books, I can understand the confusion. So all of this caused Shyamalan to give up on his dream trilogy until fans kept begging for him to finish his vision, and he realized that there were people that truly cared about his concept. He decided to dust off the other half of his Unbreakable script he didn't end up using, perfecting it, and put out his secret sequel, Split. And the rest is history. Unbreakable is a movie that does not deserve to be forgotten and should be praised for all the risk it took. Shyamalan poured his heart and soul into a film that was financially successful and did end up becoming something people loved. The story is compelling and emotional, talking about themes that we all universally can connect with. It was ahead of its time for the genre, using serious tone and expressing realistic depictions of the world in films about superheroes in a way that had never been done before. If there is anything more important to speak about this film, it is the message about how scary it is to not know who you are in this world. So get up and find your purpose before all the darkness inside you wins. Be your own hero and make your own destiny.